Hello everybody, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Macberrie, Doug Macberrie, and myself discuss Disney films. And today, in honor of the Christmas season, we have conducted yet another poll on our Disney Debate Facebook page. And the results of that Facebook poll for the Christmas movie that we're going to watch in just a second. But before we begin, I have, once again, a cat.
Oh. Merry Christmas, everybody. Yeah, I can't do the Tim Allen laugh. I apologize.
Well, you're sentenced to having to do a Tim Allen Christmas movie this year. And we have a Doog.
Hey, I want to talk to you about this. I pulled this card off of Eric last year, and now I'm stuck doing the Disney Debate forever. What gives?
Well, you see, because we needed a third person, because the people demanded it, and you took the card, you put on the suit, you're stuck with it.
You're going to be hearing from my lawyers.
It's in the fine print. Look at the card under a very, very tiny microscope.
That's exactly why you're going to hear from my lawyers.
Come on, you know how it works. You put on the tall man glasses, you become the new tall man.
No, I don't want to work at Wegmans.
And just to be clear, the tall man is here in spirit. I miss him. I haven't heard from him in a while, but he has been in communications as we update the old episodes to the new channel and yada yada yada. It's in the fine print on the contract.
Yeah, but unfortunately that contract's outweighed by Wegman's contract, hence why he's now enslaved there. Plus he is government man from the government. The government enslaves everyone.
He's the government. He's the government. He's the reason nothing works. But yeah, today Doug and Kat and I are gathered here to discuss the winner of our Christmas 2019 poll, and it is the Santa Claus. We had two polls. We had one for Halloween, which Halloween Town won. And we had one for Christmas, which the Santa Claus won. Granted, we kind of limit the options a little bit based on stuff that we know or that the people in our group know, because there's certain Christmas and Halloween films that we may get to eventually. But these are the ones that we thought would be the most popular, and they voted the Santa Claus. So Kat, were you prepared for this?
I kind of was, because out of everything on our list, that was among the most popular. So I figured it had a good chance of winning. And to be honest, I'm not all that surprised or disappointed. I mean, I grew up with this movie. I don't hate it or anything like that. It's just when you watch it as an adult, it becomes way more disturbing. That's the only thing that threw me off.
Mr. Doog, what do you think?
Well, I did not grow up with this movie. I was definitely aware of it as a child. I remember seeing the promos for it, and I think at one time my pediatrician's office, they were playing a bit of it in the waiting room. But yeah, no, I never saw the movie in full until we watched it for the debate. Yeah, I'm with Kat on this. It's I definitely find this movie kind of disturbing. It does take a lot of leaps in logic. And I don't know if when I was a kid I would have liked this movie very much. I certainly wasn't interested enough to go see it or rent it when I was younger. So yeah, I don't think I would have cared much for it as a kid.
You see, me on the other hand, I also grew up with this as a kid, and this was a lot like Halloween Town, where I would watch it every Christmas. But yeah, looking at it as an adult, there are very interesting and weird choices I still think it's the best out of the Santa Claus trilogy, and we may get to the other films later down the line. It all depends on the Christmas poll. I mean, granted, there's a lot of
You
different.
mean the North Pole?
Boo.
Oh, 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 oh.
You suck, McBain. Oh yeah, speaking of which, Disney Plus is out, and I have been watching The Simpsons on it. So like Disney Plus has the Santa Claus on it, and I'm compiling a list of all the past Disney debates and other stuff that what they have and they don't have. It's not ready yet because I still have to go through it, but there's a good amount that Disney Plus has, and they do have the Santa Claus if you want to go see it. But yeah, I grew up with this, and I feel like the Santa Claus is a very young kids movie. Much like Halloween Town, it relies on you having very childish logic. It relies on a lot of childish belief, and as you slowly get older, you begin to see the cracks in it. Kat, do you want to give a brief summary of what this film entails?
Yeah, so this movie, unbeknownst to everyone at the beginning, is actually the prerequisite for every Tim Allen movie that came out in the 90s. So, yeah, Tim Allen basically plays an asshole who, is like head of a company, and he's divorced with a kid, but he treats everyone around him sort of like shit, and he's all sarcastic and like basically does his best to be a snide and like, and not, I don't want to say nasty, but just a jerk in general. Well, during this movie, he has custody of his son Charlie. They try to spend a Christmas together, although it doesn't go well because, he can't cook a turkey and nearly sets the place on fire. But that night, after he reads Charlie his bedtime story, he hears Santa landing on the roof. Well, he goes out to investigate, and distracting Santa for that brief moment somehow causes Santa to fall off the roof and fall to his death. Whereas in Tim Allen ends up putting on his suit, gets a hold of the sleigh, and basically like does Santa's job for him. And then it's revealed that, hey, since he put on the Santa suit, that means he's now the new Santa, which means that in a year's time he has to completely abandon his life, go through body dysmorphia, and basically live out the curse of Santa for the rest of his life. The good old jolly holiday stuff.
Until he falls off a roof and disappears. And the funny thing is, there's not a body. The body disappears, and it's written on the card in his suit in very, very, very fine print. And later there's even more fine print, but we'll get to that in the sequels. But in fine print revealed under a magnifying glass, it basically says, you put on the suit, you're the Santa Claus. That is the Santa Claus, Clause, because they're being clever. And so you put on the suit, you're the Santa Claus, and there's a lot going on there. But Doug, initial thoughts on just the idea of this alone.
I mean, first off, it's a Tim Allen movie. It's, Tim Allen being his, jackass self, kind of like Tim the Toolman Taylor, but like take his, being an asshole up to like 11. And then, yeah, I mean, the concept itself is, I don't even know what to say on that. It would be pretty basic. It's just that in execution, it really, it does not work at all.
I think the biggest thing is I don't like any of the main characters. Mm-hmm. And Tim the Toolman Taylor, Tim Allen is good at playing the sarcastic person, but his ex-wife is kind of a dick. They're both bad parents, and Neil, the step parent, I used to like, but looking back on it, he's one of these pompous psychiatrist types who thinks they know everything.
No,
And
seriously, everybody in this movie is an asshole. And the kid is creepy as shit. I mean, really, really uncomfortable with how obsessed he is with Christmas and, the whole Santa Claus thing in general. Also, the Santa Claus itself, that would not hold up in court.
yeah, I mean,
There is not a way in hell it would hold up.
the thing with fine print is you have to sign the contract. That's the whole thing about fine print on a contract. You have to sign, and it's also contradicted by both of the fine prints in later movies, because in the sequel, just to briefly bring it up, there is a Mrs. clause, which is an even finer print, that apparently also holds up. But there's also an escape clause that they don't bring up in this movie, but they bring up in the third movie where he can give it all up. And it's just like, okay, they keep introducing more elements to this contract that would not hold up in court. But let's just stick with this movie for right now. This clause itself is not binding, and they guilt trip him into the role. He can't choose anyone else. He's like, no, you're just going to be disappointing millions of children. They guilt trip him into it.
You can't even call that guilt tripping. They just give him no choice. That's entrapment. That's what that is.
Yeah, and like one of the few characters that I really like in the film, Bernard, who's he just like, he goes in, he eats everyone's food, he just appears at random moments and stuff like that. He's a fun character, but even he's like, he's an asshole to Tim. He's just like, you put on the suit, you're the big guy. He doesn't give him any choice. He doesn't say, okay, well maybe you could find someone else to do the job. No. And it's like, and they contradict this too, because the little elf girl who gives him the pajamas says, most adults stop believing. It's like, okay, then why don't you get an adult who believes?
Well, technically, he did say he believes. Like, the fact that he was so adamant about, making sure Charlie kept his faith in Santa Claus, like, I guess counted for something, even if he later on disputes that he really doesn't believe in it. So, I don't know.
It would be one thing if he still believed. And, it felt like they were going that route when he was just saying, hey, I believe in Santa Claus. But as the movie goes on, he starts hesitating, and he's like, no, I don't believe it, when he's confronted by the North Pole. And as a kid, I kind of used to like the message where they said, seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing. Because as a child, everything is about belief. You believe that something is real, therefore it is. Now it feels very much like a forced religious metaphor. It's hard to say, because part of me likes it because, they did kind of a similar thing with Miracle on 34th Street with the faith speech. Like, if you can't believe in anything out of faith, then you won't ever believe in anything. And I do think there is a certain amount of truth to that, because you have to have some faith in your life. But this is very child logic.
Yes, it's very child logic, and unfortunately this movie makes the mistake that a lot of holiday specials tend to do. Like, this is a world in which it's established that Santa Claus exists, and yet a majority of the world, doesn't believe in him. Like, parents are adamant about, that, oh, he doesn't exist, it's all in the kid's imagination. If that's the case, then how the hell do they explain the presents that show up on Christmas? Because, granted, there are presents there that obviously the parents buy, but how do they explain the ones that they didn't buy? Like, does Santa just suddenly, like, put the idea in their head that, that they must have bought it and not, forgot about it or something? Like, that always annoyed me. Because, like, It's especially annoying because in this movie, Charlie's parents are so goddamn adamant about the non-existence of Santa Claus, and it gets really grating because it's like, do you not see what's happening to Scott here? Do you not see him spontaneously gain weight and grow a beard? Do you not see all this other magical shit that seems to be happening? Like, are you really that freaking blind? And even worse.
Well, on that subject, I'm a little confused because in the beginning, it seemed like Scott was upset that, they had the Santa Claus talk about him not existing without him involved. And it's like, I'm like, is Scott for, believing in Santa Claus, or is he, they don't really give you that until, like, they just thrust it down, and it's like, oh, he's just he doesn't really exist. It's like, okay, you're gonna flip flop like that.
There's some inconsistencies there, but it also, like, I think you could maybe explain one of the big things with perhaps in this universe, only the people who believe in Santa get presents, but they don't state it. And if they had stated it, that'd be one thing. But then again, why don't the people who don't believe get coal in their stocking? Also, how does Santa afford to give someone a canoe?
It also doesn't make sense considering when you see the workshop, it looks like your stereotypical old-fashioned Santa's workshop with them all working at the benches with hammers and tools and stuff, trying to build like these, stuffed animals and these wooden toys and everything. And then when they deliver them, they're like these state-of-the-art things, like you said, like a freaking canoe. It's like, do they really build this shit up there? Do they use like old-fashioned Amazon? Like, what the hell? Or do they just fucking conjure it? If that's the case, then what the hell are the elves for?
And like, Santa Claus is supposed to be on a time crunch, but they like often take their sweet time getting around the globe.
I do like they try like to half-ass explain that, like when Neil is like grilling Charlie with questions about, how Santa could exist, like how he could get around the world. And he's just like, oh, well, not everyone celebrates Christmas. Plus, I think there's some time continuum thing that, like, stops when he's, like, flying. I'm like, wow, that was your best, thing? You really couldn't, explain that better or show it or anything like that? I mean, for fuck's sake, when they did the Doctor Who special, they at least, added in that Santa had access to, like, TARDIS technology, hence explaining how he's able to get everywhere in one night.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's again, it's a very child logic. I do like how they explain the fireplaces in the magic bag, though, because, like, they make a lot of jokes about, like, this guy doesn't even have a fireplace. And he gets sucked in very bad CGI. Very bad CGI. Like a lot of the practical effects actually do still hold up, but the CGI does not.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing sometimes, honestly.
Also with the bag, I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Mary Poppins. But they explained that the bag is magic. It lifts him up, and he gets sucked into the chimney in bad CGI, and a fireplace appears. I like that, but again, very child logic. As a kid watching it, you're like, oh, so that's how it works. Makes sense, like, to a kid's brain. But now I'm looking at it like, okay, so, but does this apply to everyone in the world? Like, they do, the fact that they lampshade it only adds to the fact as an adult that there are some serious plot holes in there. But then again, it also is fun. It's fun seeing Tim Allen get, like, sucked around to different parts and being Santa Claus and telling the girl that he's lactose intolerant. There's some really fun individual moments in the first half of the movie where he's trying to figure out about what's going on and stuff like that. But there are also creepy parts. For example, yeah, he starts getting fat and starts eating and lots of sweets. And his boss is the father from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he actually comes back in the sequels, but as Father Time. I guess he must have really liked being in the movies.
um,
Well, the thing I think is
and
messed up with all that is that, after they explain everything to him on Christmas about what's going to happen, they never show up again until like almost a year later. It's like, hey, good luck dealing with these changes happening to your body and all this weird magical shit that's happening around you. Like, good luck figuring it out on your own until we show up for you and then take you away from your life forever.
And they say, oh, we'll come for you Thanksgiving. And okay, that gives some time, but he has to learn this entire industry with no help in less than a year. Granted, he is in the toy industry. They do establish that he works for a toy company, but it's not exactly the same thing because, profit margins is very different than let's just give toys to children. But how do they even keep the factory running?
I couldn't tell you.
Tax exempt status? I don't know.
There's so many questions. But then again, like while he's learning about it, there's some really really funny lines. Like he's just when he talks to one of the elves, she's just like, oh, it took me, I think it was like 500, like 700 years or 1200 years to get it just right. And he's like, oh, you look good for your age. And she's like, it's okay, I'm seeing someone in rapping. I'm like, okay, I gotta chuckle out of that line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, the humor is pretty good in this movie. Like, a lot of it comes from, Tim Allen. He is a comedian and everything. So, and even, like, the physical humor is pretty funny, too. But
There's some good slapstick. There's some good physical humor. There's some good stuff with Bernard. But a lot of it, when you look at it under a microscope, does not really hold up. For example, there's the part where the kids line up to sit on his lap in
That's
the
not
outdoors.
creepy or anything.
also, what horrible parents leave their children alone to go sit on an old man's lap?
Well, to be fair, this was the early 90s. Nobody cared about kids back then.
Oh, they did. I assure you they did. This is post America's Most Wanted, so.
Oh, okay. I mean, granted, this wasn't the post 9/11 timeline, so things changed overnight.
I guess, but yeah, like that is creepy though. But the thing that I think like really puts me off about this movie is like two very big things. One is the kid's insistence on letting everybody know that his dad is Santa Claus. It's like, yeah, I get it when he gets excited at first after, that whole night happened and he's like, is eager to tell everyone what he saw. But he keeps it up through the entire year to the point where everybody thinks that he and his dad are crazy. And the parents even take out a restraining order against the dad, depriving him of his visitations. Like, suddenly this whole like holiday special becomes like a judiciary court battle between parents over whether or not one parent is unfit to like be around the child. It gets like really uncomfortable, and it sucks because it's not even the guy's fault really. He was suckered into this whole thing. He has no control over it, and the really annoying thing. Not once in the entire time does he, stress that to his son. Like, Charlie keeps, telling everybody who will listen that, oh yeah, my dad's Santa Claus, my dad's Santa Claus. And they keep telling him no, but he keeps going. And his dad, like, the closest he comes to is saying, oh, well, let's make this our secret, okay? And this is a kid. Kids can't keep secrets. It's like, why don't you freaking tell your son, hey, like, stop talking about the Santa thing, otherwise I'm not going to be able to see you again. In fact, I'm going to go to jail if you don't shut the hell up about this. Like, they never do that, and it annoys the fuck out of me. And granted, yeah, like, Charlie is right, he was telling the truth, but it's like, you're gonna get your dad in trouble. Do you not care in the slightest? Like, I get he's a kid, but there is a certain age where, like, kids understand, consequences. It just, ugh.
Well, according to Nash, the people don't fully understand consequences until 21 years of age. So maybe not, but I mean,
I imagine a 10-year-old would understand that if he said a certain bad thing that his parent did, that his parent would get in trouble for it. Like,
that's true.
kids aren't that stupid. Heck, I saw a news article once where a kid got his grandmother in trouble because she accidentally dropped like a thing of weed in his lunchbox, and he knew she was gonna get in trouble, so he tried covering for her. This kid was 6 years old, and he understood the gravity of what would happen to his grandma if anyone found out about it. Like,
Nah, he just wanted the weed.
Seriously, though,
it
never-
was 420.
Seriously, though, never underestimate the intelligence of a child, because they're a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
That
They
is
really
true.
are.
That is very true. And part of me thinks that they really, really wanted to make this film Miracle on 34th Street, but without the court stuff. Because there's not
They
really.
still throw in like all the legal and Santa on the run from the law shit. It's like, why do holiday movies have to keep doing this?
I mean, I liked it when they did Miracle on 34th Street because they had a lot more premise and was supposed to be more for an adult audience. But even still, it's just like that's I don't think it works as well in this case. But also here's another problem. They don't try to hide the secret. The elves in the sleigh and everything keep coming in plain sight. And when I saw that, I completely forgot about that. The only line I remembered from the elf part was, "We're elves with attitude," and that was just one person. But I forget that they fly in front of all these police. They have the sleigh flying in front of like a whole neighborhood of people. They don't try to hide the secret. So why can't he just tell everyone and show everyone that he's Santa Claus? I mean, Bernard just appears in the home eating their turkey. Like,
Seriously, that's like going off of what Kat said earlier about, he can't, reveal this shit to his ex-wife and everything. And yet it's like, you could have the elves or somebody come around just to, prove he's not insane. He's, this. You could get him off the hook, but no. They had to wait until, like, the last possible minute to do that.
mm-hmm. Also, according to the timeline of this movie, he has technically kidnapped his son for Thanksgiving until Christmas. So there's been a manhunt out for him for that long. And when he breaks back into the apartment to give them like gifts, they don't immediately call the cops again. And here's a thing that really kind of set me off. Why does he not just give the weenie whistle and the dating game to them immediately to prove he's Santa Claus? Because he knows like what they want. And why didn't Santa give it to them in the first place? Were they naughty children? Did they get cold? Like, everything is so jumbled.
I think they would have tried to explain away the gifts, like, maybe Scott had heard the wife's desire for that at some point, or something like that. He overheard in conversation. I just know they would have tried to explain that away, and it wouldn't have been that easy.
Just fly them to the North Pole, or better yet, because in later films. In the second film, second and third film, they bring the families to the North Pole. They're allowed to do that. Why not just bring them to the North Pole and prove it? Oh no, they're divorced. They don't need to be in on the secret. What secret? The elves with attitude are flying in front of people. They're wrapping them very fast. And yeah, these are good individual gags. And that's what really gets me about this film as an adult. I like a lot of it, but when you think about it, when you stop and think, there's some really big leaps in logic.
Actually, I came across some information while researching this that might explain a couple things, but would make it all the more worse once I talk about it.
Oh God, go!
So,
You have the floor.
so I didn't really notice this until, despite having grown up with this, I didn't really notice this until we watched it together. I noticed at the end you actually see elves in the crowd of people who are watching Santa Claus fly away. And I thought that was a bit odd. It's like, why are the elves suddenly showing up in public and just mingling among the humans? Like, and so when I looked it up, they mentioned that you actually see these elves throughout the film as early as like the beginning. Like they're actively mingling among people, and they happen to show up in like all the spots that Tim Allen and his son happen to go to, which makes me think that, okay, so this is how Santa knows who's naughty, knows who's nice, and is able to keep track of everyone. But it also makes me think they were scoping out Tim Allen from the beginning. Like, they actually intended from the get-go to make him the new Santa, which would explain why the old Santa was able to die so easily. Like, think about it. This guy's been on how many rooftops, and then suddenly somebody like calls out to him and he slips and then dies. Like, if you ever see like a Tim the Toolman Taylor, he does that like on a weekly basis, falling off the roof and stuff, and he's like perfectly fine. But with Santa, who's a magical being, he suddenly dies from falling off the roof. I'm thinking that the old Santa was tired of his gig, he wanted to retire, he sought out Scott Calvin as his replacement, and then just arranged it so that he happened to see him and got into the right position so that way he would take his suit after he supposedly died, which would explain why he suddenly disappeared and didn't leave a trace behind except for his suit. So that means that, yes, this whole thing is in fact entrapment. Like, he willingly passed off his curse to another person. Like, and this time, like, we know for a fact that this was planned. Because if you notice, when he goes back to the North Pole, none of the elves bat an eyelash at this new person that suddenly appears in Santa's sleigh. They're just like, oh, it's the new Santa. Okay, cool. Welcome, dude. It's like, they knew. They knew what was going on. Like, that just makes this so much worse.
Yeah, because, I mean, upon rewatch, I did notice that the elves appear in the crowds, because, I mean, they have the pointy ears and whatnot, so you can kind of see it, but it raises further questions. It's like, okay, so you know he's going to be the right person for the job, but they don't get his consent. They don't ask him about it. Like, there's just so many things to this clause that are very, very bad.
And you know what makes it all the more worse? The third movie completely undoes the consequences in this movie, because they make it seem like he's stuck with the suit forever, that, you know, just by virtue of having picked it up, like, that's his job for life now, he's Santa. But they reveal in the third movie that there's an escape clause, meaning that all he has to do is hold one of those snow globes and say he doesn't want to be Santa Claus anymore, and then he goes back in time and undoes having, you know, picked up the suit. It's like, really? You're just saying this now. Like, years and years later, you did not give that an option to him when he first started. You know, make it so that being Santa Claus was his choice. Like, that just makes it so much worse. So much worse.
What would have made this better for me is two things. One, if people couldn't see the elves, because yeah, they're blending in with crowds and shots and whatnot, but it would be better if the elves were invisible unless you're a child, and that would actually explain why they could fly around and do things in plain sight. The other thing is, ask Scott Calvin, ask him. Just get his permission. Even if he just had a verbal agreement, that would have made more sense.
You know what film actually did this plot better? Ernest Saves Christmas.
Ernest Saves Santa.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because think about it, in that movie, it's kind of the same thing. Santa plans on retiring, so he gets a list of people he considers for Santa and gradually goes through them till he decides on the perfect candidate. And then when he presents it to the guy, he makes it so that it's his choice whether or not he wants to take up the mantle. And granted, he does kind of try to guilt him a little bit, but he ultimately knows that it's his choice and there's nothing he could do about it. And by the end of the film, the guy comes around and he becomes the new Santa. So, it actually feels natural. It's not this fucking film where, the guy is cursed into this life that he never chose, that, he pretty much is doing out of guilt and out of, obligation to his son. And it feels awful. Like, yeah, he kind of comes around at the end, but it's like, this poor guy, he's supposed to be the big asshole in this, and yet everybody else is being a bigger asshole just by doing this to him. It sucks.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, there are just some minor changes that could have made this work better. And granted, a lot of the humor works because of the sarcasm and witty line delivery, but you could have still had that with him battling with the decision. And here's another thing that I've been thinking about since we started this podcast. We never actually see the previous Santa Claus. We never meet him. We never get an idea of what he was like, if he was a good person. Obviously there's the Santa myth, but, part of the reason Ernest Saves Christmas works is because that Santa Claus is brilliant.
The worst part is that, nobody talks about him. The elves don't talk about him. There's no pictures of him around. It's like he never even existed. It's kind of messed up when you think about it. Although, I'm guessing he must have been a shitty Santa Claus if, the parents are any indication. They stopped believing because they didn't get the big toy they wanted. And that was, when they did believe. So, I don't know, because the whole thing about the film is they're saying, oh, you have to believe for Santa to, be real or whatever. But they did believe in him, and he still didn't bring them what they wanted, and then they stopped believing as a result, which I kind of think is messed up. But still, it's kid logic. So I'm guessing the guy must have been a really shitty Santa Claus if none of the elves bat an eyelash that he's gone now and keep no trace of his existence around the North Pole whatsoever.
He must have been a pretty poor Santa, and I mean, they established that Santa knows automatically by looking at someone whether they're naughty or nice. I don't know. Doug, thoughts?
I'm pretty sure that the North Pole, everybody there is mafia. I think that's the only way they skirt some of the shit, and I think. It could also be not necessarily that he was a shitty Santa, but, it's they've probably gone through this kind of thing numerous times before. It's like the Doctor. They probably have numerous people who've been Santa Claus over the years, so it's a normal thing for them to experience a new Santa. So, that's what it is. But yeah, they're definitely mafia.
I know, that calls into question, how many Santas exactly have they gone through, and how do they each meet their demise? One thing I noticed is that they alter Santa's suit when Scott takes over, so they make his suit mostly fireproof. So it kind of was weird to me, considering Santa can make chimneys appear by magic and everything that aren't lit. So, what happened to previous Santas that made them go this route? Did a Santa burn to death or something? That's really dark.
But what happens if I fall off the roof? And they never answer this question.
You know what the ironic thing about this? In the movie Christmas with the Cranks, Tim Allen's character actually does fall off the roof.
One thing I do commend the elves for, they have inside the sleigh a hot cocoa maker, and out pops a cookie. I want one of these for my car.
I will admit that is very useful, but at the same time I question why Santa would need that, given that almost every single house he goes to will already have milk and cookies. That kind of seems like overkill to me. It's let's kill Santa faster with diabetes.
It just seems like kind of a reach for a sight gag is all.
Yeah.
Well, if he's powered by milk and cookies, I mean, he can't have lactose intolerant milk, so soy milk all the time.
God.
But anyway.
I also want to know why it was that, they on the first Christmas that they have him, why did they bring him to the North Pole and then like send him home overnight while he's sleeping? I would think either they keep him there and then they send him off the next day, or they let him go home but then have somebody come to his house to, explain the situation. I don't understand the logic.
I feel like they were trying to go like a Wizard of Oz route or something, like, it was all a dream, or was it? But, they had two people there. They had Charlie there who clearly remembers everything, so that doesn't work. It just, ugh.
Yeah, like... Alright, final thoughts for me time. If you're a kid, I think this film is relatively harmless. It's enjoyable, and it has a lot of really good jokes that work. But as you get older and as you start thinking about it, it all falls up. It's kind of like the Santa Claus legend as a whole. I like the idea of the Santa Claus, and Santa Claus is based on a real person. But when you stop and break down like the hows and whys and all these other things about Santa that don't add up, much like this film, it just starts to fall apart. There are some things that I still get enjoyment out of it as an adult, but there's a lot of plot holes, and the elves are mafia.
Yeah, honestly, again, it's probably because I grew up with it. Like, I do kind of see this as mostly harmless. There are a lot of, like, illogical things and annoying things about it that, like, grate at me as watching it as an adult. But, like, it's still, like, a Christmas classic for a reason. Like, it honestly does have somewhat of a unique premise in that how often do you, like, see a holiday special where somebody kills Santa and then takes over? And not only that, but, like, it's one of, like, the few, like, Santa-based stories that actually doesn't involve a villain. Because nobody's really the bad guy in this. There's no, like, evil, like, snow miser, no Krampus, no, like, mystical creature trying to, like, take over Santa's, like, job, or, no corporate businessman trying to, like, steal toys or anything. Like, if anything, the bad guy is more skepticism and the judiciary system. But even so, like, it's a premise that sticks out to you. Like, it definitely has a feel to it, and despite everyone being an asshole, the actors are legitimately trying with the material they have. Like, I actually do give somewhat of credit to Tim Allen for this. This was actually his first leading role ever, and it was a Christmas film. So, I think he managed to, like, pull it off pretty well, and, like, considering, all the prosthetics he had to wear, the fact that he had to wear a freaking full-ass Santa getup in the middle of summer while doing this, like, I think, deserves some credit. Like, honestly, like, he beat out a lot of other, like, big talent guys, like, to do this role, and I think, like, granted he plays the same character in a lot of his movies, I do think this is among his best, personally. Like, just because, like, he gets a lot of good one-liners in this. So, but yeah, as a whole, like you said, it's harmless. It's, a cute little Christmas classic. Kids will enjoy it. Just don't think about it too much.
And Doug, what do you think?
I think I'm going to go the opposite route. I don't think I'd want to show this one to children. I think it's aged horribly. And B, yeah, it's like a lot of the stuff where it takes the leaps of, logic and everything, you never know exactly what these kids are going to take away from it. So, I don't know. It's not something I really want to find out. I would much rather watch Ernest Saves Christmas than watch this again. But yeah, I mean, that's just me.
Actually, one thing I wanted to mention, there's actually a controversy surrounding this film, at least like in the early days after it came out. Um, the movie actually inadvertently promoted the telephone number of a sex line. Because
Oh god.
yeah, there was a scene that has long since been edited out of the movie where at the beginning when Charlie gets dropped off by his mother and she gives Tim Allen the phone number for Neil's mother to call them just in case. It ends up spelling out 1-800-SPANK-ME in numerical numbers, and to which Tim Allen is like, "Oh yeah, I'm familiar with that phone line." And yeah, some kids actually legitimately styled that, and again, it led to a actual sex line. And there was so many complaints that Disney had no choice but to actually buy out the number and disconnect it so kids wouldn't be tempted to keep calling it. And then they changed the numbers around to something completely different. Like, I just think that's so funny. Like, it took like a good like 3-4 years before they actually did anything about it. And now you won't even like see it in like DVDs or like on TV or anything, which I think is a shame because stuff like that to me is hilarious.
So yeah, I think this was certainly enjoyable, not the best film that we've covered for Christmas so far, but it's a Tim Allen Christmas movie. What do you expect? You know, you burn the turkey and you go to a restaurant for Christmas.
Go to Denny's. Ugh. Charlie, I'm obligated to keep loving you, so I'm gonna take my rage out on my own body. We're going to Denny's.
Well, don't you know, Denny's tastes like America. It's America.
Christmas America.
But with that being said, I am Zenith, Warrior Princess.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Doug Macberrie.
And just remember, if someone falls off your roof, don't put on their clothes and read the fine print. And get a big magnifying glass to check the fine print underneath the fine print. And if some guy comes into your kitchen named Bernard eating your turkey, you run.
Or, call the police for all 3 scenarios. I'm just saying.
Objection!
Ninjas! Call the cops!
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Happy holidays, and watch out for elves with attitude.
Hey, this is Megami33. Thank you for watching Zenith Will Review. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. If you like what you see, check out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ZenithWillReview.